There he is. What's going on, my man?
That all right. I can't be making you laugh. Don't worry about it, man. You better stop, bro. I'm gonna
Hey,
kill
look.
you. Listen, I'm gonna tell. Let me give me your mother number. I'm gonna call her now. That's when I kill you. I'll wipe you. I'll, wi- I'll wipe you out on live.
Hey, listen. I need you
why?
to cut it out right now. I
Why
need
my
you to
feet?
cut it out.
Why is my feed always like this, man? I don't know why. I gotta figure this out. Somebody trying to wipe me out, man. On my screen is really good, but then I go on Facebook and I look like a gremlin on Facebook. And I'm not talking about because I ain't got no haircut. I'm on strike. But I'm just talking about they digitized me, man. I think I'm in the matrix.
Yeah, man. I don't have a. My haircut is little to be desired right now as
Uh,
well.
the red distracts you from all this extra stuff that's not cut. But I'll make
Right,
sure I
right,
stay.
right. That's okay. That's okay. Listen, we said from the very beginning, yo, this is after work hours. We at home in a relaxed state, trying to discuss things that pertain to anxiety filled issues that we trying to level up from. Right. So it's okay. I had to talk myself into it. I was like, all right, this gonna be the first time I put a hat on live. I definitely ain't gonna be able to get no jobs after this. And then I
thought
was like,
about
yo,
that.
who am I talking to? I can't be talking to me like that. Yo, that's my corporate trauma. What's going?
That's a fact, bro. Like I told people, even when we first started talking about it, I said, man, there's some people who have never seen me without a suit and a cut, right? Like they probably like, man, this dude is dressed better than the CEOs they're around, and it definitely looks better. Hi, if I might say so myself, right?
Right.
But now you go into this next phase, and it's just like, yo, if it's for me, then it's for me. But I definitely won't be doing it because of the standards that other folks are setting or saying, or that makes sense. So that's just my little piece this morning, because I am never average.
Hey, listen, right. And um, what we're really trying to do is disabuse others from these flimsy notions as we disabuse ourselves.
Hmm.
And you know me, I don't mind dressing up and looking the part and putting on the uniform required for
Hmm.
the setting
Yeah.
for the context of the event. Um, but at the end of the day, right, I'm still Jamal. I'm still the dude who used to get in trouble for the stuff that I get paid to do right now. So at the end
Facts.
of the day, that's just what it is, right?
Hmm.
Um, okay, got a little feedback. All right. Yo, so Rob, today's subject. It's just me. It's just me and Rob today, people. No special guests today. But we got something nice in store for everybody that we plan.
Hmm.
So don't tune out now. Hey, we um we want to talk about something, that has always been, on my mind, underneath the surface, right? Because it's, again, like a lot of the things we talk about, is directly out of um, my personal wheelhouse and personal experiences, and that's being unprepared to manage and unequipped to lead, right? See, corporate trauma in its initial phases and stages of identifying it, right? There's a lot of finger pointing. People who suffer from corporate trauma like to point the finger at other people and
Hmm.
other things.
Hmm.
Um, but the blame squarely sits in front of you, that person that's looking back at you in the mirror, right?
Right.
You are in control of what you are in control of, and you shouldn't be worried about, right, what you do not have under your control. That's easier said than
Hmm.
done. All right, what about, unfair tactics?
Hmm.
Okay, you can't control that. But what can we control? There's a lot that we can control, nowadays. And one of the things, man, that comes to mind, Rob, with the reason why I thought about, I wanted to specifically talk to you about this, right, is because in coaching and developing leadership development programming and training and pulling people along through the phases of professional development,
Hmm.
there is really a gap, a gaping hole, a Grand Canyon
Hmm.
on prepared leadership in the corporate industrial complex. I don't mean prepared as in, right, people that are tenured, that have been in the game for a while and have experienced things. I'm talking about intentional tools of the trade, concepts that have been proven, and then a diversity of thought that fit a multiple list of people and situations that professionals can tap into and learn something from. This shit is just missing. And pardon my pardon my language, but it's just like it's not even there.
Yeah.
Case in point, right? I was looking through the internet, and I'll pull up the article a little later on in the broadcast for references for those that are listening
Hmm.
and watching. Forbes wrote an article and released it on October 1st, 2016. So almost exactly 5 years ago, where they did a survey that came back and said 98% of managers feel widely unprepared for their role.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is just lower management, right? And if anybody has worked, extensively in the corporate industrial complex, right, employees get promoted usually into management, and then from management to middle management, and then middle management or fancier titles like directors or executive directors, and then you get your C-suite and your executive level leadership. But those frontline managers have so much power and sway on the way that an organization is built, the culture, the experience of the professionals working within that organization is so much on the shoulders of frontline management. And it's mind-boggling, but then it's not, right? That 98% of them, 98% came back in this survey done by Forbes, said that they were ill-equipped and prepared to function in their role. 98%, Rob, do you think that's an exaggeration, or you think that's accurate? You're muted.
Wait. I wasn't even talking yet. I was just
Oh, I got you.
I was doing one of those, but no, I don't think that it's exaggerated at all. When we really process that whole entire idea, who usually gets promoted? A lot of times folks don't get promoted, or even if we take sports, it's not the person that usually has great leadership skills. It's the person who knows how to do the work. And the expectation is, well, you know how to do the work, then if we put you in this position, you'll be able to help us be more effective. You'll be able to get folks on board. You'll be able to handle the tide that comes in from those who will more or less be within your team. And that's far from the truth. Because when we really think about it, you put somebody in a position because the idea is like, well, if they know how to do the job, they'll be good. But they don't know how to talk to other people. Because a lot of times the folks who were the superstars were the individuals who were, hey, I know how to do my job. Chill, cool. I come to the meeting, we can rock. We on the team. But that doesn't mean that they actually know how to be a leader. That doesn't mean that they know how to actually get the most out of people without alienating them. So when we really think about it, they jump into it, they take that role, and they're like, well, just like with anything else, man, I scaled the whole entire building. I'm good. And then it's different when you operate with people, right? So you could be a great employee, you could be number one. That doesn't make you a leader, right? And even when we think about sports, it's the same thing when you think about sports, right? You could be the quarterback, you could be the wide receiver, you could be the running back. But a lot of times it's another person in that organization who's the real leader, who knows how to draw those things out of people. So when we talk about coaching, when we talk about mentoring, that big piece is companies better make sure they understand who the real linchpins are, right? And sometimes the linchpin is not the person who face is in front of everybody. Sometimes it's that person who's way in the back that not only knows the secrets, but know how to make sure that you're comfortable with who you are, what you do, and where you plan on going. And a lot of times those are the people who companies take advantage of, or they minimize. So I hope folks start to pay attention to that.
But you know what? It sounds like that we incentivize the outliers or high performers, or those that bring in truckloads of productivity, and we penalize everybody else by, number one, using them as a carrot, promoting them, and then putting them in front of everybody else without preparing them. I mean, how has that been successful, right? How have
Mm-hmm.
we survived? Because just think about it. 5 years ago, 98% said I haven't been trained for my role.
Mm-hmm.
This is the same frontline management, excuse me, that had to inherit the pandemic, right? Social
Mm-hmm.
distancing, a virtual workplace, swift change, where you had to go from, product productivity over people to people over productivity
Mm-hmm.
overnight.
Listen.
This is the same core. This is not 50 years ago. This is 5 years
Mm-hmm.
ago. Many of those people are still in management positions. Many of those managers have moved up to middle management. But it sounds like what you're saying, that the people that are most equipped for leadership
Mm-hmm.
in the way that we envision it are usually those that kind of hover in the middle because they can identify with both sides of the spectrum? Or are you saying it's a specific type of individual that has the ability to lead people and make it safe for them to be themselves, that the corporate industrial complex can get away with promoting without training? Like, we have to think about this. And I say this all the time. I tell people all the time, be careful. Do not assume that the people that are leading you, managing you, the people that you quote unquote work for, don't assume that they know what they're doing, because a lot of them do not. They are learning on the job. And guess who they learning from?
From you.
They learning from you through
Correct.
trial and error. Oh, that
Correct.
didn't work, but let me make it seem like their fault.
And
Boom, that didn't work.
you'll be halfway dead, legs gone, arms gone,
For real.
your hairline starts to recede, your relationship
I
is
told
down the
you.
drain.
I told you, don't make me laugh.
Yo, but you know what's so crazy? Sometimes, we think sports is just a game, right? But the doggedness, yes, is needed, right? And a lot of times the people who have that dog, that, I'm just gonna get it done, they find a way to rise to the top. But it's not all the time that those folks have a high level of emotional intelligence to be able to discern what's this from that, and this person from that person, and actually be able to do what makes sense when it's necessary. So you could be an awesome employee. Then when you become a supervisor, if at some point in time you don't realize that everything that makes sense to you, everything that's easy to you, won't always be like that for other people. And if you don't ever take a step back and ask the question, and a prime example of that, why in the world are like very, very, very great athletes the average or below average coaches, right? Why are many of the highest performers the folks who were doing great as one-on-one individuals in the company, right? Them with the customer, them with the supplier, whatever the case may be. Then when they get there, they struggle, right? Because the craziest thing about it, all of them have something in common. They believe that is what helped them is they bust their ass, right? And just like Michael
That's right.
Jordan and a bunch of different players and a bunch of different folks, there's some things about you that you were blessed with that, in combination with your ability to work ridiculously hard, it helped you get there.
That's right.
Now, when you got to turn around and try to get other people to get there, the only thing you ultimately say is, yo, just work hard. Just work hard. And you don't take into account that that person doesn't have certain abilities that you have. So who ends up doing a better job of coaching them? People who don't have none of those skills.
Mm. Wow. Wow.
Right? No, I'm just saying, like, you don't have to be ridiculously gifted to be a gifted coach. And when I say ridiculously gifted. I'm talking about in the skill of what you're doing,
Right.
right?
I got you.
You don't have to have the best fadeaway. You don't have to have the best dribble to be able to coach somebody on how to do X, Y, Z, because ultimately you understand how to put them in the right positions to be great. If you're a great athlete or a great employee, in your mind, you're like, well, you should just know where to go. All I got to do is just motivate you.
Mm.
And that motivation isn't enough because the things that's missing are the pieces that you had naturally. Right. So folks that meet me, they'll be like, oh, Rob, what could you tell me? And if I'll make the mistake and tell them, listen, just work hard, and not realizing like I have a great personality and a lot of enthusiasm. And I lean on those things and an ability to read the room that may not be natural for other people. So if I don't pay attention to that, then ultimately I can set somebody up who's like, yo, listen, you just got to study and work hard. And then when you go in the room and it's time to present, you'll be ready. Yeah, you'll be ready to give the information. But when them jokers don't like what you're saying, when they like, oh, this dude is whack, and you can't even turn it around, you'll be crying when you leave.
You know what? Your sports analogy makes me think of one of the most underrated leaders in sports history, Allen Iverson. Right? Allen Iverson wasn't real vocal. Allen Iverson wasn't he didn't command a room's presence with this overwhelming personality. Allen Iverson, because of what he went through before he even got to college, he had gone through enough to say, regardless of where athletics takes me, when I get there, I'm going to be myself. And his ability to think outside the parameters that he was given and focus on the gift that he had, right? And just be himself. So overnight, you saw tattoos, right? You saw cornrows, right? You saw the NBA players stopped wearing suits to the game, which was an NBA fraternity, like it was an unspoken rule, like that was what you did to present yourself as a professional.
Some of them suits are horrible too, though.
I told you, don't make me laugh.
My goodness, that whole entire Steve Harvey lineup, like the Steve Harvey lineup, the jackets were always awesome, but my goodness, them pants, you could fit everybody. Everybody in your house could fit in them pants. I don't know why he did it, but okay, I digress.
Yeah, you digress, right? But Allen Iverson made a great point. He said, man, I ain't never showed up to no basketball court or no gym somewhere with a suit on to play basketball. He said, man, this is what I know. And that's all he could trust. And that's all he was willing to base his decisions off of, because everything else that everybody else was telling him had already failed him.
Yeah. So
his ability to tap into himself gave permission for a whole generation of other athletes to do the same thing. And he's just, and I think that's one of the reasons why he got such a hard time, because he was an incredibly underrated leader, right? See, managers, they manage things, right? And now we're moving, into the next phase of our conversation. Unprepared to manage, right? But unequipped to lead is the next phase of that unprepared to manage conversation. That's the next step. So you've been unprepared to manage, and you have made it into leadership, where now you are providing vision based off of stunted growth, because you were unprepared in your last phase. So now you're giving vision to people coming up behind you that have to subscribe to that vision in order to push things forward. But your vision lacks depth. It lacks diversity. It lacks equity and inclusion. It lacks emotional intelligence, right? To your point, it lacks so many things, because you are unprepared to manage, and now you
Mhm.
are unequipped to lead, but you're in leadership. Like, what do we do with that?
Well, folks hire managers to be leaders, and then when you realize that, and you said it the best, bro, right? And I don't know, I don't always think that folks are unequipped to manage, right? Because ultimately, like sometimes that just comes down to them knowing their stuff enough. But the ability to lead, you have to be able to see through certain things. Like you're gonna, and maybe I'm just speaking from my own point of view, but being able to read the room, have a sense of what's happening around you. How are people being impacted, not just at work, but also at home, because you understand that what happens at home also happens in the office and it impacts them when they're in the office. So being able to bring those things full circle. And even when I think about Allen Iverson, just imagine, you know, if that's the role that he wanted to have, where he was intentional about what he was doing with the expectation that others would follow and feel like he could help, like his way of viewing things could help them break free, right? Because ultimately, like you were saying, what he was
Hmm.
doing was about him
Break
being
free,
himself,
right?
right? The more he understood about himself, the more he could make progress in the game and in life, which indirectly impacted other people directly. I'll say it like that. It wasn't like, oh, hey, I'm doing this so for other people could catch on, right? But it did, and then that directly has for a lot of people a positive effect on their life. Like, yo, hey, I was the guy. Like, just understanding the bravado, understanding how he moved, how he viewed things, and how he also like he settled in to who he was and what his game was and what he represented. That's key. And then I'll hit people with this last little piece. It's from the book called Work of Leaders. From some of the stuff that I do with everything disc and five behaviors. And it talks about VAE. And you kind of hinted towards it. Vision, alignment, and execution. Right. It's so often folks think that when you have this been given this vision from this company, now it's like, okay, cool. I know we got to do, the team's going to be on board. You got to have your own vision of how you're going to get these things done. And from that vision, then you go to folks and you say, okay, how do I get them to align with this vision? How do I
Buy
get the buy-in? There you go,
exactly.
right? Right?
Facts.
A lot of folks jump past folks that have a faulty vision, have non-existent alignment, no buy-in, and jump straight to execution. Yo, let's go. We about to be millionaires. Wait, what's my man name? What's his name? Gilly. How his face? We about to be millionaires, right? My Philly light skinned brother. We about to be millionaires. Yeah, like he be doing on face expressions to stick it with the Philly piece. But folks jump straight to execution, and then when things don't go well, they're like, yeah, they blame it on everybody else. And it's like sometimes you got to take a step back. And the last point I would just say, to touch on what you said when we first started, take a step back and realize where you went wrong, right? Because it's so often we focus on everybody else. And I think we talked about this last week or the week before. If it's everybody else's fault, then that means it's on everybody else to change it, which means you have no power in the situation. And
Right.
I relate,
That doesn't work out mathematically.
doesn't I, and I relate that to um the situation of black black folks, and then people of color, women, etc., etc. The only way for our lives to get better is for someone else to decide to do something different. That's a horrible position to have, because ultimately all decisions are on them. And if they have an epiphany about who they are, for me, I'm not beat for that position. Like, it's one of them things where it's like, listen, we might just disappear and go into the forest. Going to the forest. I don't like bugs. I don't like rodents. But forest, because if you tell me the only way we can make this change is if the right person got to get voted in, we got to have all the laws. Listen, We talk about 270 or so years. We still talking about things that they was talking about 270 or so years. Like whether we talk about from First War to the Civil War, whatever the case may be, you know, these things don't change. Folks will always find a way to benefit from your pain.
That's a fact. You know, I've been in management positions and I've
Mm-hmm.
been in leadership positions. And I've either been really good,
Mm-hmm.
at times I've been really bad,
Mm.
unequipped, unprepared, and it all the responsibility and everything that went wrong began
Mm-hmm.
and ended with me, right? And then there were times where I was in leadership positions where I was okay. But if
Mm-hmm.
I stayed long enough, I was able to push through to the good and then sometimes even to the great, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the question, right, that I always ask myself, because at a certain point, I like to look at numbers. I don't overly analyze, the numbers of everything. But working within the corporate industrial complex, for a significant amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
you don't see a diversified group of C-suite leadership in place or ready to take place,
Yeah.
right? And then working with recruiters hand in hand, like we
Mm-hmm.
have, and recruiters come to individuals like us and say, we can't find the talent. Can you go get the talent? Or the talent doesn't exist. Like now we're like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
unequipped or unprepared to manage, right? Unequipped to lead, your diversity is walking right out of the door
Mm-hmm.
because we're not protecting the investment on
Yeah.
the front end
Yep.
by spending some money
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that people learn
Mm-hmm.
what they need to learn, right? And and so now we have a huge diversity issue. We have a huge
Mm-hmm.
equity and inclusion issue, um, that we're trying to push and close the gap on that quickly
Mm-hmm.
because things have changed so quick, things have changed so fast. Life after George Floyd, like I've heard you say
Mm-hmm.
before, right?
Yep.
The pandemic. Now it's an exposed nerve. Now you have to now you're getting ready to lose a lot more than um, your investment on the back end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which a lot of organizations was like, okay, we might lose this on the back end, but there's a revolving door, like we can get more in on the other side. Well, that option, excuse me, that option is quickly closing down.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? Quickly closing down, and it reminded me of a clip, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I've seen recently, and this is where we're gonna go with this conversation because I believe that saying what do you call it? Unprepared to manage and unequipped to lead is very, very general. It's very, very, it's very, very broad and very vague. Um, but we actually have to get way more specific in what it is that we're talking about, right? And there's a few different ways that we could do that. But tonight we're gonna pick one particular topic, which
Mm-hmm.
is why are there so few Black people in particular, or people who identify themselves as Black, in corporate leadership positions? That's a
Mm-hmm.
question. And before I play this clip,
Can I get an answer
yes,
that the
that I
guy
was
from
getting ready to ask
can,
you before
can
I
I
play
get
this clip.
so let me give the answer that the guy from Wells Fargo said. He said, yo, because they just ain't out there. There ain't enough of them. They can't be found. I think they're the abominable snowman. That's my Muhammad Ali cadence. I don't know. Right? So when you like, and here's the craziest thing. I just wish he just would have said, and I hope somebody sends this to him. He could have said all of that and then gave a solution and said, but that's why we're about to invest $5 billion on not just getting folks hired today, but building the pipeline for tomorrow. Right. And no matter how much people could have beat him over the head, he could have said, listen, you might not like what I said. Right. But the money that we're about to invest will make sure that we're not only looking to have people transition from this industry and then try and figure out how they can fit into our industry. We're going to find people who love what we do. So for me, now with my own hat on, there's a lot of folks out there, but the difference is it's not that folks don't have the skill sets. A lot of times it's the experience and where you're looking, right? So as someone who's recruited on who knows how many campuses, how many career fairs I've gone to on the East Coast, Midwest as well, you're looking for diverse talent with the same mentality that schools have when they want to have black kids come to their schools, right? You're looking from the same mentality when people say, hey, we want to make our culture better, or we want to make sure we have people fit in. But the issue is you always cast a wide net. Your net is casted in a way that it's not targeted for black and brown people. It's targeted for everyone. And everyone ultimately means you catch the fish that you usually catch, and then you get a couple of them little beautiful fishes that you usually don't see, and then you say, well, you know, it's working. Ah, bro, you just did the same thing you were doing. Your net caught the same amount of fish you usually get, but it was so big that you caught another five fish, and you like, well, we did something. No, but if you had a specialized net, if you had something that was geared towards honing in on what this group of people are looking for, what they like, where they want to be. Prime example, you go on campus anytime this year and you see all of the folks at any PWI who are recruiters, 9 out of 10 of them, 9.5 of them will be white. If you go to Nesby, 9.9 of them will be black, even though only 2 out of 10 of them are actually recruiters. The other 8, somewhere they work in the company somewhere, and they're like, look, we need representation to get these young engineers to be a part of our organization. So what do? When they recognize they have it somewhere, they send folks who look like them, hopefully talk like them, and can relate to what they are looking to get done. That has to be the tactic everywhere you go. And then it also has to be the tactic for folks who are you're looking to hire in middle management as well as in the C-suite. All of those things are key in all of those companies. And I'll just leave it here. All of those companies probably need to get together, whether they create some type of organization or put together a pot of money to go out and find people and help them understand how to translate or take these skill sets and align them with these skill sets, and then have advocates somewhere that can make sure that these people actually get the proper look. Now, for those folks who say, oh, yeah, I don't see color, you don't need all that. Listen,
That's part of the problem.
it's so much a part of the problem that we believe that it's accurate.
You
right?
got
Like
one more time to make me laugh.
we about to die. Listen, I told you, mother, I love her already.
He doing this on purpose.
Send you home in a coffin. I don't know if you remember that thing. Put him in a coffin. Like, yeah,
Oh man.
but you know, you sit and you just look at that whole entire thing. There's always people who want to fight against what's necessary for other people who are not them.
Right.
Oh, well, and here's a prime example. And this is not about what people believe makes sense or not. Who you should marry, who you should date, what you should do with your body, right? Because it's not you, you're at odds with the people who it actually impact. And this analogy goes from one of these standpoints. You could be in a room with people who are advocate about their Second Amendment rights, right? And I hope you folks are able to correlate and understand, but I'll do my best to make it make sense. They'll say, "Yo, you're not taking my gun. You shall not." I shoot you. I shoot you. You're not taking my gun, bro. I love this gun. And then they'll go and they'll vote for somebody who will tell a woman what to do with her womb, what to do with her body. They'll tell somebody who to marry, right? And it's not, and I don't say that because I'm on board with everything. I don't preach from, I don't look at it from that standpoint. But I do believe that if we believe in individual rights, then there has to be some type of consistency. And the idea that somebody can't tell you about your gun, an inanimate object, but they can tell you who to have sex with and who to marry. I'm lost. And people believe that that's real and that's true and that's okay. And some people were like, Rob, you just nuts for that. No, that is real. You know what I mean? Abe, you dudes who feel like that, go get vasectomies, bro. I ain't down. Let her do what she wants. I ain't down. And because I'm not down, I'm not down to put no
Yo, what's in your water?
Bro, I didn't run out of water. Oh, I'm gonna just say this. I'm not letting nobody clamp me, and I'm not advocating for her to be clamped. Like, that's just me, period. Like, that's exactly how I look at it, and it maybe it's selfish, bro. But I tell people all the time, like, I'm not clamping nobody. And I just remember that Family Guy episode when the father was gonna take the dog to get, what is it, spayed or neutered? I don't even know how it works, but he's gonna get his joint clipped. And when he got there, Brian looked up at him. He had this sad face, and he was like, "Well, I don't know, man. This don't mean." He started having dreams or something. Like, well, he started thinking he was the dog. And once he put himself in the shoes of the dog, in his mind, he said, "Well, man, how would I feel if somebody decided for me to cut off my reproductive organ?" Like, so that whole entire idea for me, and for those who couldn't relate it, at all points in time, folks advocate for things as long as it doesn't hurt them.
No, that's a great point. That's a great point. And one of the things that you said earlier that I don't want to miss or move past, you used the word pipelining. So pipelining don't mean I'm gonna just recruit, because we're being specific here. Why is there's so few Black people in corporate leadership positions, right? It's not that they're, based on what you're saying, it's not that there aren't qualified people out there that fit that description, right? And you mentioned pipelining. So pipelining means that I'm not just recruiting at Morehouse, Spelman, Howard University. Like, I actually have to put some effort in. And then I love the analogy when you use the analogy of fish, right? It's 15,000 different species of fish, and each one of them
in your backyard, just in your backyard,
and each one of them likes something different as bait, right? And that's one of the things. So one of my favorite movies, Mo Better Blues. Wesley Snipes was having an argument with Denzel Washington backstage.
Yeah.
And Wesley was upset. He was a little inebriated, but he was upset, and he was arguing. Shadow and Bleak was arguing. Wesley Snipes and Denzel Washington. And Wesley Snipes' character, his name is Shadow, and he was arguing with Denzel, the leader of the band and the rest of the band about why people aren't coming to watch them play no more. And he just got fed up. He said, the reason why people ain't coming to see us and to see our show is because you grandiose so-and-sos don't never play nothing they like. If you play the stuff that they like, the people will come. Right? I've never forgotten that line from that movie. Spike Lee is a brilliant writer and director. And it was a Shakespearean type of moment in the movie where a very simple, common sense thing was the linchpin, to use the word that you used earlier, for the whole concept of what it is that we're trying to accomplish here, which is equipped leaders, and also we're trying to prepare managers, because we have more specific things that we have to be working on within the corporate industrial complex, and you have to get beyond the pale of the box that we talked about last week with Professor Stalwart. So I'm gonna play this clip, and y'all chime in. CBN has been going off in the chat.
No, that's his lane.
That this is his lane. So I'm gonna share this, and
we waiting, we looking. Oh, here we go.
Y'all tell me what you think.
Can't hear it yet.
Absolutely no shortage of effective people who can run companies. What I see missing is really the whole concept of advocacy, sponsorship, and a conscious development program. In other words, very few people start out with the skills and capabilities to be the CEO. And what has to happen is companies have to figure out where the executive is today that has the potential to do that. And there might be one or two areas that they don't quite have, but could get. And the question is, what is the plan to help them get there? And if there isn't advocacy and sponsorship, but there is advocacy and sponsorship for others, you don't close that gap. And so I think one of the areas I would say has contributed to it is the fact that the whole focus on diversity became a much broader topic. That's good. That is a good thing. But when you aggregate, you also have to segment. And you have to say, not just how are we doing broadly speaking on diversity with women, with African Americans, Asians, Hispanics, etc. You can't just say, oh, we're doing great in diversity. But when you look at the data, it turns out many companies were doing very well with women. Hooray, that's great. But they weren't doing well with other communities. And so I think companies and boards lost the focus. And I think one of my beliefs is that any executive who was committed to building a really diverse workforce from the top down, that's reflective of the customers they serve, by and large has failed. Now, if that executive failed in hitting their earnings per share, failed in introduction of new products, failed in the introduction in other important compliance issues, that CEO would have been fired. But poor performance in this domain has been tolerated and accepted. And I think the good news is those days are over.
Yeah, I mean, Rhonda, the whole diversity, the whole word diversity in and of itself, in my view, in my humble view, has become a diversion away from the word Black. Because when you create the diversity bouillabaisse, you then take and throw white women in it, Blacks, Latinos, Latinx, Asians, gay and lesbian, veterans, what have you. So you can make your diversity numbers look marvelous, depending upon how you want to, what you want to count, what you want to throw into it. And I think it's incumbent upon those people who are in corporate America, who are in a position, because there's a dual responsibility here. There's a responsibility, yes, for a board or a C-suite to say, we're looking for a diverse slate of people that we're going to be moving forward in this organization, and with a purposeful, intent on doing that, and using the word specifically Black, right? As you say, as you disaggregate these numbers, that's when you get to see, you say, well, wait a minute now, of our diverse thing that was 38%, 90% of that was white women. So we're still down. We don't really have as diverse a slate as we thought we did. But there's also, and I want to touch on that too, there's also responsibility for Black executives who are sitting in some of these C-suite positions. They too bear a responsibility. There's a requirement to say, I'm going to make sure that I'm not the last person to walk through this door in this position, but that I open this door and push 10, 20 others to do so. When we think about this group, and I'm talking about the Black executives group, what do you think is driving perhaps their fear of wanting to open that door and make sure that the next Ron Williams comes through it?
I talk to a lot of executives in those circumstances, and I think they fall into different categories. And I would say the best that I've seen simply say, I'm going to hire the best executives I can find, and I've looked, and 3 of them are Black. And judge me by the results we produce. Don't judge me by the color of their skin.
Right.
I talked to one executive who was a CEO, fairly new in a smaller company, happened to be a woman who was Black, had hired a new executive who was Black, and the company was in an uproar. Did it mean that all of the white males were going to be out? Now, this was in a group of other CEOs, white, Asian, everybody. And I said, I want to pause for a minute. And I want to ask how many of the other CEOs have ever spent a minute pondering over the fact that you're white and you just hired a white executive? And not a one of them said anything. They all said, I wouldn't spend 2 seconds on it. And so I think to some degree, people have to have the confidence in their judgment, the confidence, their ability to communicate, and most importantly, the confidence to speak plainly to the organization in plain English. Now, I have an expression that loss of privilege can feel like discrimination. And the example I use is there was a point at which, let's say, to be a police officer, you had to be 5'10". And if you were 5'10" or above and you had a pretty clean record, you could go down, you could apply, and you stood a pretty good chance of getting that job. Now, the minute they said, you don't have to be 5'10", you don't have to be a male. You have to compete against women. You've got to compete against people of smaller stature. Maybe you're Black, maybe you're Hispanic, maybe you're Asian, you're Filipino, whatever. All of a sudden, people who had that advantage don't have it anymore. And so when they don't get the job, the answer you get back is, I'm not the right demographic. That's not the answer. The answer is, you had an unfair competitive advantage unrelated to the skills and attributes necessary to do the job. Now the arena is truly open to people who can do the job, and they're going to be judged on the criteria of the job. So I think it comes down to executives really have to have the confidence to be able to hire the people that they think are the best people. And I can tell you, because of the struggles, the challenges that many Black executives go through, they are really good executives. I have a quote I use that many executives, when you sit in a room, are always certain and occasionally right. And I can tell you, if you're in that room and you're Black, you're worried about being always certain and always right.
Right.
Wow is correct. I didn't even hear you, but definitely, you're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
All I said was wow.
Yeah, I know. I heard you, but I didn't hear you.
You know, now don't take it from Jamal and Robert, right? That was former CEO of Aetna Health, Mr. Ronald Williams, and then the president, CEO of Black Enterprise, Mr. Earl Graves, right? Having a conversation. And when I listened to that conversation and the poignant, common sense, grounded approach to a very prevalent problem, I'm like, with people like them out there that had to do and have had and are still having to do what they've had to do to get to where they're at, there is no excuse. There is no excuse, right, anymore for at any point in time, 98% of frontline managers feel unprepared, right, for their roles, or leaders unequipped to lead, right? Because they got the answers. May not be the answer that's right for you right now, but there's a distinct possibility that they have seen something that can be formulated into training. And when we think about leaders and managers out there that actually receive training, not orientation, not onboarding for your company, I'm talking about real training and know-how and concepts and reference things that you can lean on to do your job. Like, there's no excuse for this stuff not to be for organizations not to have a present leadership development program that can equip leaders and prepare managers.
But it's like I said, it's so consistent that it's normal, right? And let's just think about it. If you can't level set and agree on reality, then you operate in the matrix, right? And when you think about it, a lot of folks, they want diverse talent, they want their companies to do well, but you only put money behind what you believe in. And in your mind, you have to believe that by being more of a diverse company, the bottom line will be heavily impacted. But if you believe that the black guy is on the same page as the white guy or the Asian or the woman, whatever the case may be, then in your mind you're like, well, I'm gonna just hire whoever comes my way, and then we'll still be in the top 500 on the Dow Industrial, right? We'll still be top 50 and on the S&P, right? We'll still be all of those things. But when you start to believe, like, hey, this person is going to change the game. And an example of that, not a hiring practice, but more or less recognizing who you have, even though they didn't truly recognize it. And I know I'm not going to remember the name, but I think I got it somewhere. When the folks are going to the moon, right? And they needed those calculations run. And they had a whole entire room of black women who were supercomputers before supercomputers were actually real, right? Just imagine if they believed in that and believed in it to the point where it's like, we're going to put you in rooms, not just train folks, but lead folks. We want you to look at things differently. We want you to open the box, come out the box, not just be a woman, not just be black, not just be a scientist, but see how far your awesomeness can take you. Right. And I just think that we're not at that place. And when we get companies to get there, then everything will change. Everything will change, but we're not there. And I don't know if we want to waste another generation or two. We better just get our own. That's just where I'm at. However small it's gonna be, or however large it's gonna be the next day, whatever it is, but we better start to put our feet on the ground and start to make some traction.
No, I agree totally, right?
So Jamal had to go because he was about to say something that was going to make the system upset. I don't even know what he was going to say. Don't come and get me, system.
No, I was just saying, yo, I totally agree.
Back in.
Yeah, I'm back in, man.
I thought they got
totally
you.
agree because I mean, this conversation between these two gentlemen is not a pompous, know-it-all type, arrogant articulation of how you can solve a very complicated and complex problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the solution is easy. The solution is simple. So, and there's a couple of things that they said. They said if you aggregate your diversity, you also must segment your diversity because it is a way to get around solving the real issue. And if a CEO were to fail that dividend breakdown, right? And or not be able to hold on to their staff or lose company market share or whatever, that CEO will be, set up for a nice golden parachute. You know what I mean? A severance package. In other words, fired, right?
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I'm saying? And that's another subject for another week. Debunking the emotionalism around getting fired, right? They would just be removed. Like, yo, we need to do something different or go with somebody else. There's a different type of leadership that we need to solve this issue.
But we gotta believe. But if you don't agree on what the issue is, right?
Right.
If people say, "Hey, a cough is because of something with your respiratory system,"
right.
One group says that, and the other group said it's because your feet are ashy. Right? If both sides are willing to go down with the ship based upon what they believe, you cannot. How do you make the right amount of traction to have an impact? That's our issue. There are people who are like, "Nah, I don't agree with that. Like, that doesn't even make sense." Folks said, "Yeah, like." You don't believe who got elected. You don't believe this person got shot when they got shot. You don't believe you believe.
This the only thing people believe. Sorry for the inconvenience. Sorry. That's the only thing people believe. Right? That's what it's coming to. And the frustrating thing, like I was saying, it's the solution is easy. We just heard a plausible approach to solving a complex and complicated problem. But we will continue to put unprepared people in place, hoping that they will get it. And most people do a good job of adjusting and making the changes and lamenting over mistakes. But you can't focus on it, not in the corporate industrial complex, because if you do, that expresses weakness. You just got to keep moving. You got to do what it is that you need to do to keep moving. And then you end up learning something, right? And you continue this song and dance of, all right, this is the problem. That's the problem over there. When the real problem is you, unprepared, unequipped. And not that that's your fault.
Yep.
But it's your responsibility Once you get into a place, man, I've been in place and stuff has been over my head.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, what am I going to do? And see, that moment right there is the moment that's the difference maker. When you make the realization, yo, I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, but I don't have to stay there. Like, I'm gonna figure this thing out. And the best way to figure it out is to connect with your people and building relationships, like what CBN said when he was our guest a couple of weeks ago. But the corporate industrial complex don't say no, productivity, winners, winning some games is gonna get rid of all of that dysfunction, is gonna get rid of all, it's gonna cover a multitude of sin. No, it doesn't go away. People, you trample over people's careers, and corporate trauma happens, which is like running into the buzzsaw and falling into the meat grinder, right? Now we don't need no buzzsaws and no meat grinders. We just need prepared leadership. You understand what I'm saying?
And all of that goes a long way. And the crazy thing is, as I'm listening to you, a thought came to mind. If 98% of the folks are unprepared to manage or lead, put on top of that societal issues that are workplace issues, and then you have not just the piece with the culture that of the company that adds to it, but you have the individual that multiplies the negatives of why you can't keep people who look like us in the workplace, right? Because ultimately you got to find them, but some companies can find them based upon where they are, right? But you can't keep them,
Right.
because your folks, they're not ready to lead, and they're definitely not ready to lead someone whose cultural background is different and don't want to be humble enough to ask the question or to know the people, so they just say, yo, just get the work done. Because it's the weirdest thing, and we talked about this, I think, podcast 2, that old way of thinking where I just work, I don't need to like what I do, I don't need to really interact with other people, that's almost gone.
Right.
Right? I'm not spending 8+ hours with you plus some overtime. Then you want me to go to these crazy ass functions. We don't even get along. Like if you trip the day, I'm not just gonna laugh at you. I might sit there and make sure you trip again. Who knows? Right? But we really gotta be realistic. You're not just training someone to lead what is the everyday Joe or everyday Jane. You have to be able to adapt to the Rickies, the Rons, the Johns, the Taekwons, the Tashanas, the Lisas, the Leslies, etc., etc. It has to be personalized, at least to an extent where you understand what their foundation is, what they need, what they want more of, because you're no longer in the Ford manufacturing plant where all they had to do was take this piece, hook it up to this piece, and they ship it out. You don't just need bodies, right? Because ultimately, if it was just about just having bodies, then it's just like, all right, cool. I don't really need to care about what you do and who you are, what you got going on. I just need, can you come in here and press this button?
Mm-hmm.
Can you add glue to this strip right here and press it together? You can.
Right.
All right, cool. Just get that done. And when you hear the horn, check your timestamp, your stuff, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, just so everybody has a good reference point, I want to share this so that you can see. Great article. You can Google it right now. A startling 98% of managers, field managers, need more training. And widely unprepared for the role, right? Those are key. That's a key point in the article. It's a quick read, great read. It's 5 years old, and it was very interesting to me to consider that this was the brand of leadership that had to inherit, what we are looking at today, which is one of the reasons why we might be witnessing the great resignation, right?
Next.
It's one of the reasons. They were unprepared anyway. I had to learn on the fly. Y'all didn't even care enough to show me the ropes. And now I'm faced with all this extra stuff and all this different stuff. And I'm asking for help. And I don't get none. Hey, pardon my grammar. Right? And then you force people into a situation where we saying we all quit. Sorry for the inconvenience. Well, that's not what we want to promote here. We just give them traction to that conversation so that we can level up past this thing called corporate trauma. And but I definitely want to shout out Black Enterprise, great resource. Former CEO Ronald Williams of Aetna, of Aetna, and CEO Earl Graves of Black Enterprise. What a great conversation. CBN was talking about, he attended that conversation and how it was fantastic. It was a fantastic webinar of leaders having real conversations. And if you browse Black Enterprise, the website, I'm sure that there's a way that you can pull up excerpts of those conversations that took place when Mr. Williams and Mr. Graves had this conversation.
Yeah,
so
we gotta
Rob,
get one of them up here, man. We got to get one of them up there, man. I know.
It's only a matter of time. It's
you
only
know
a
some
matter.
people. You know the people.
Right. It's only a matter. You're right.
When I call, they be like, "Oh, here he go again."
They're gonna be like, "No, we're not going up there. Robert chooses violence."
Listen, I be like, "Everybody leave. Everybody leave." Telling you.
Oh man. Hey man, you got the final word.
Choose accountability. And if you're one of those managers or someone who's about to get promoted, do your homework on more than the work that you do. Right? It's so often that you think that it's just about the work and you not. And here's the crazy thing. We worry more about the billions or the millions that we might mess up by doing a poor job. Here's what's more important. You mess up someone's career and you make them waste their time because you didn't want to go out and figure out more about yourself and what you could do better. You could have all the reports in the world. You could have all the contacts. But if you can't find a way to make the people who are within your department, the people who are looking to you for guidance and leadership, if you can't find a way to make them better, then you failed the true mission of a leader. And I'll leave it there.
That's so true, so poignant. Great point. Right? It's all right to make a mistake, but the errors is what we have to decrease. That's what I got from what you said. So thank y'all. I survived tonight. I got this tickle in my throat, this postnasal drip. Everybody, I'm fine, but I appreciate you. Hush, Rob. I appreciate you managing with me tonight. And what is that? Oh, okay. This is a great time to be socially distanced. But I really enjoyed. I wouldn't have missed this for the world. Appreciate y'all, the corporate trauma community, tuning in. And next week we have another powerful episode for you coming up. And so look out for that. Same date, same time. But until then, remember, corporate trauma is a sneaky passage trauma that will creep up on you. And when it does,
we are going to level up. Let's go.
Let's go. To quote my man Pierre Campbell, let's go.